Okay, welcome to the AdaptX podcast, where we have conversations with individuals building accessible businesses, advocating for inclusion, or excelling in adaptive sports. Our intention is never to speak on behalf of those with disabilities, but to provide a platform to share their stories and amplify their ideas to a more accessible world. Today, I'm joined by Jack O'Neill, an above-knee amputee who swims at the Division I level at the University of Wyoming. Jack recently qualified for the Paralympic Games, and we look forward to watching him compete in Paris this summer. So, Jack, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
So I've followed your story for, like I mentioned, the last 5 or 6 years, but it was initially in triathlon. So maybe can you take me back to growing up, what sports you competed in, and what kind of drew you to swimming?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Growing up, I was mostly a swimmer. I actually found the water because of one of my surgeries when I was 6 years old. They broke the bones in the lower half of my leg. And then we put like a halo fixator around my leg, and then we pulled the bones apart every day to make it grow. And so one of the great therapy options for that surgery was water therapy, because it's kind of gross, but it like kind of cleans out like the wounds where the rods would go into my bone. But also it was weightless, so it was like I felt so good as somebody who was in pain during that surgery to go into the water. It felt so good. So that's where I discovered swimming, and then from there I joined my summer swim team. I lived in Illinois at that point, so I joined my summer swim team in Illinois. I got disqualified in every single race that season because I didn't really know the rules, and my parents weren't swimmers growing up, but they were happy to watch me swim, and I had a great time. And I don't know, I guess I just never really stopped swimming. I eventually took up triathlon a little bit after my amputation. So right when I was probably 10 years old when I did my first triathlon, and I did my first season of triathlon in a hand cycle and a racing wheelchair, just because I was having trouble with prosthetics at that point. I was still a new amputee, so I was learning the ins and outs of prosthetics and what that looked like. And then I did triathlon through it was probably my sophomore year, I think. And then right around like my junior year, I was like, I need to hone in on swimming. I really want to swim at the Division I level. And so yeah, I kind of was reeled back into swimming only at the prospect of swimming at the Division I level, and now I'm here on my way to Paris. So,
But you had a lot of success in triathlon. You were competing in world competitions, and
yeah, I got into the ITU circuit. I raced in Sarasota at the Continental Cup, and unfortunately flatted out at that race and was not able to finish. But yeah, I did make it to the international stage there.
why did you not bike with a prosthetic? That might be a silly question, but in all the pictures I've seen of you competing, you just use your unaffected limb.
No, it's a great question, actually, because I started triathlon using my prosthetic leg, and I have a lot of hip issues. So the motion of like bringing my left leg over the pedal was really tough on my hip. And then if you like, you know how time trial bikes work, you're in that tucked position where there's like very little movement. You have to be very flexible. I wasn't able to do that with my prosthetic on. So one day I was like, man, screw the leg. Let's just see like what I can do on one leg. And so I took my road bike down to the park and just kind of took off. It was like the like easiest like click. It was awesome. So yeah, that's kind of why I did that. And now I ride all my bikes one leg.
So you were born with a congenital deformity in your leg that required a lot of surgeries, but you weren't initially an amputee, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, so I was born with a clubbed foot on my left leg. My knee and ankle didn't really bend or work, and my left leg grew at a slower rate than my right leg. So it was kind of awkward looking. There's like a few pictures with when I had my left leg. It's just kind of like this small, underdeveloped, like it didn't really contribute a whole lot. And so we tried to save it for 9 years, really. I mean, I had it amputated a month before my 10th birthday. Went through a ton of surgeries to try and fix my knee, ankle, the growth difference. And eventually, a month before my 10th birthday, I was like, I've had enough. Just amputate it. So,
Yeah. So is that your decision to make? I guess at what point do they determine that the surgeries are futile and that amputation's the better direction?
yeah, that's a good question because a lot of doctors wouldn't amputate my leg.
Right.
They thought that I was making the wrong decision at that point because a couple doctors had laid out these plans of like 10 plus surgeries that they wanted me to go through to try and fix my left leg. And me and my parents, in talking to them, I was like, this is not the plan for me. Like, I'm a 10-year-old boy and I want to run around with my friends, and right now I can't do that. And so that was at the point where the Paralympics were starting to grow. So I saw um, Paralympians running on blades, and I was like, I want to do that. Like, that's way better than the state I'm in. So, yeah, I had my leg amputated, found a doctor who would do it, and I've been great since.
Yeah, that speaks to the importance of the representation in sport. And with the Paralympics getting more publicity this summer, hopefully that just continues to grow. I mean, I wonder if you had never seen blade runners or people like competing in that sport, whether you would have had a different approach to it. Obviously, you recognized that the surgeries were limiting and you didn't want to spend your time rehabbing all of these surgeries, and there was a different path forward. But that representation, just seeing what was possible, I'm sure played a role in your decision.
Absolutely, you nailed it on the head. I mean, a big part of the reason that I wanted to swim Division One was for representation for disabled athletes, and I mean, I'm lucky enough that I was into sports at that time, so I saw people running on blades. But I think representation in things like the media, commercials, movies, stuff like that is equally as important as in the Paralympics. So.
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over that because I think some people might assume that when I said that you swim at the collegiate level, that I meant that you're swimming when adaptive sports, like you're competing against able-bodied athletes as an amputee.
Yeah, no, I'm competing against the best in the country, and no, they're fast.
So maybe what are the primary deficits or challenges that you face in swimming compared to, I guess, your peers that you're competing against?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of training, the big thing for me has been how do I keep my shoulders healthy? Because obviously my stroke relies almost entirely on my arms. And so at the college level, I mean, you have 10K days or 10,000 yard days where you grind out 10,000 yards and then you wake up the next day and boom, you do it again. So working out, we get limited at 20 hours a week, just trying to stay healthy because my body has to work harder than the people next to me. Not that the people next to me don't work hard, but it's more so that my body physically has to do more to keep up with them. So staying healthy is a huge thing for me. And then everything else is just swimming, though. I mean, when I show up to meets, it's just racing. It doesn't matter who's next to me, how many legs they have, how many legs I have. It's just swimming. And so that's what I love about the college level.
I mean, that's still almost impossible to grasp that you're basically only using your arms and you're still competing against these people that obviously have a significant advantage. Was there any part of you that is more comfortable in the Paralympic space, or do you prefer to be in that more inclusive, like able-bodied setting? Do you have preferences one over the other?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I, I say it a lot that I think I was born to be a college swimmer. I love the Paralympic side of everything, but I nothing gets me more fired up than like a dual meet against Air Force or like traveling to an invite where there's three other teams and we want to come out on top. Like college swimming is 100% where I think I belong, and I love every moment of it. Yeah.
How are your turns? I assume it's another thing that's a challenge.
Yeah, my turns shockingly are not as great as my teammates. I do a lot of turn work though, so I'll do a lot of like front squat. We'll do a lot of like cleans and stuff like that, just to try to make my legs stronger. And then obviously working on underwater dolphin kicks. That's a huge thing. So I've actually made it a very big point in the last year to kind of buff up my turns, just because like although I know I'll never be as strong as somebody with two legs off the wall, I can obviously close that gap the more I work at it. So yeah, it's been a big focus.
So when you're training and you're doing that lower body work, you're doing it without your prosthetic on?
Yeah, so when I front squat, I take my leg off. So it's kind of interesting to watch because I'll take my leg off, I'll get to the bar, and then I'll just kind of like muscle clean it up, and then just go into my set of front squats, and then drop it back down. When I do like cleans, snatches, and stuff like that, I'll keep my leg on. We call it kickstand snatches or kickstand cleans. So it's like my left leg is kind of there for when I catch the bar, so that obviously I don't like tear a knee joint like trying to like catch the bar in an awkward way.
Yeah. So when you say you clean it up to your shoulders to a front rack for the front squat, is that just presumably because it would be impossible to walk out a front squat on one leg.
Exactly.
Yeah, from a rack.
If you take 100 pounds on your shoulders
You're
and
trying
try
to hop back.
backwards,
Yeah.
not a great recipe. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Are there things that you found to be more effective than others, just in terms of how you set up exercises? Because a lot of my audience is like fitness professionals, so personal trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, and I want them, I guess, to understand what you can do, what you struggle with, and how you kind of set up your environment to make it more accessible for your condition. So, yeah, I guess what exercises are kind of off limits and which ones do you kind of bias?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the weight room. That's like my favorite part about swimming 100%. The one exercise that I like just cannot figure out how to do is lunges, just because like you need both knees to like work in tandem to do it. So that's like the one exercise that I don't not that I refuse to do it, but like one that I physically cannot figure out how to do it. But I'm a fan of side lunges and stuff like that. So setting up a space for me, it really depends on the movement, obviously, what you're doing. For me, a lot of it is I keep when I do snatches or cleans or any sort of Olympic movement, like pulls, I usually keep the bar above my knee. I have scoliosis, so that also affects a little bit of my back strength. So I always keep the bar above my knee. So I'll do hang snatches, hang cleans, hang pulls. I don't do anything from the floor. And a little bit as my anatomy and obviously my scoliosis, like I said. So that's one big thing that we focus on. And then another thing, like you said, with when I front squat, I'll get the safety bars out so that I don't have to like take it from like at shoulder length. Like I'll keep it down by my knees, and then it's like the safety bars come out what like 3 feet or something like that, and so I have like 3 feet of space to work with inside of the rack, and clean it up from there and do some squats. So yeah, I mean, really nothing's off limits for me. I've been able to keep up with my teammates for the last 4 years, and we have a very serious strength program, and I have the best weights coach in the world. So yeah, I mean, if there's ever anything that I run into, my weights coach, we have a brief 20-second conversation, we figure something out, and yeah, move on.
What type of things do you do to keep your shoulders healthy? You mentioned obviously that's an important part. I mean, it's an important part for all swimmers, but
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, see my athletic trainer and get them worked on weekly. That kind of stuff is really big. We do some like combo stuff, so it's like ultrasound, like electricity. I don't honestly really know what it is. They put like some pad on my back and then take the ultrasound wand and it makes all my muscles like flinch. And we do that for like once a week, 10 minutes on each side, and it works perfectly. But then I do a lot of like pre-practice things. I do, what is it, probably 5 minutes of arm circles before every swim session, before weights. I will do a couple like band exercises just to kind of keep my shoulders open. But a big thing that I've learned about keeping my shoulders healthy is keeping my core strong, is correlates to keeping my shoulders healthy. So I put a big emphasis on core strength.
what type of upper body work do you do? Chin ups, pull ups?
Yeah, I mean, you name it, I do it. It's kind of like, I mean, bench press, dumbbell bench, overhead press, lat pull downs, pull ups, rows, all of it.
Any specific considerations that or modifications that you have to make to execute those movements? Just having one leg, or
I'm trying to think. For upper body movements, it's pretty simple because honestly, that's where I thrive. It's kind of fun to
yeah.
beat my teammates in upper body movements. So yeah, usually I'll like weight pull-ups or extra weight, some of the other stuff. But yeah, usually no adaptations for upper body.
We are grateful for the support of our first show sponsor. Resolution Fitness offers leading brand health club equipment and accessories for residential and commercial use. In addition to traditional exercise equipment, they specialize in adaptive fitness products and wheelchair accessible machines. If you're interested in outfitting your fitness facility or home gym to be more accessible, visit www.resolutionfitness.ca or the link in the show notes below. Is there collegiate adaptive swimming?
No,
No.
there's a couple people from the Paralympic side in college swimming, but there's no like division for us. We all just compete on our teams and show up to dual meets and compete as an able-bodied person.
Your coach at Wyoming was a Paralympic athlete or a Paralympic coach?
Paralympic athlete and coach actually. So yeah, he did both.
Is that one of the things that drew you to the university?
Yeah, so I had met Dave what was it? I was probably like 11 or 12 when I met Dave at some like random camp in Illinois. And when I was in the college search, my mom was like, "Oh, Dave is at Wyoming. Like maybe we should check that out." And so, yeah, it was kind of like the perfect storm. Like that's definitely what led me to check out Wyoming. And then there was like so many things about the school that I fell in love with, and Dave has obviously been a huge part of my story. And so, yeah, it was just kind of like worked out perfectly.
Yeah, that's a great synergy there. What are you studying and what do you hope to do maybe post college?
Yeah, so I'm a journalism major. So I hope to go into like sports broadcast, sports media. As long as I'm talking about sports for the rest of my life, I'll be a happy guy. I love sports of like any kind. So yeah.
Nice. So for people who might not be familiar with Paralympics as a competition, it's happening in the weeks post Olympics this summer in Paris. So maybe can you walk us through what your schedule is over the next month and a half, 2 months leading up to the games?
Yeah, so me and Dave actually sat down last week to kind of plan this out. So right now, after trials, obviously kind of tapered down for trials, took the training down a little bit to rest, and then the week after trials, we went straight back up, and I've been getting kicked around the last couple of weeks to say the least. He's been giving me the good workouts recently, so kind of got back up and then focused on some details that didn't look great at trials, and then I'm going to the OTC next week for some like prep stuff, and then yeah, just kind of keep doing what I usually do, stay in Laramie, uh, train how I train, and then we ship off to Paris.
What events will you be competing in?
Just the 100 back. I'm a one-trick pony, so yeah.
What were the role of adaptive sports in kind of like, I guess, coming to grips with your diagnosis and coming to grips with your differences? Maybe as a younger youth in athletics and now as an adolescent in athletics, like how important has adaptive sports been, I guess, in your life as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think adaptive sports has given me my life, really. I obviously am going to the Paralympics is a huge part of my life plan, and then I discovered that I love sports in general and want to talk about sports for the rest of my life. But it gave me role models that I are like unbelievable to me. I mean, some of the greatest people I've ever met were through adaptive sports, and yeah, I mean, it's given me literally everything. It's the reason I'm swimming Division 1. That's the reason I'm going to the Paralympics and able to do all these things is because I met incredible people who invested themselves into me and believed in me to do these things. So,
Do you hope when people see you competing that they talk about your disability, or would you prefer that they just talk about your athletic achievements?
yeah, see, I really don't mind people talking about my disability or anything. I'm an open book, but I hope they do appreciate me for uh, my athleticism and who I am as an athlete because obviously that's what I'm there to do. Like when you show up to meets like the Paralympics or Paralympic trials or World Cups, you're not thinking about, oh, I only have one leg versus whatever your disability is. Like I get to those meets and I'm in the mindset of I'm an athlete. I'm here to perform my best. Like what can I do to put my body in that position? And so yeah, I hope that disabled people in general are recognized as people outside of their disabilities. And I think if I'm recognized as an athlete outside of an athlete with a disability, I think that's awesome.
How does the classification work in swimming at the Paralympics? Like, will you be competing against all amputees, or is it just above knee versus below knee in different divisions?
Yeah, so swimming's interesting because it's a point system. That's how most of the sports work, actually. But so basically, you get classified into your class. And so I'm an S8, which means there's whatever you get graded during your classification appointment on some scale. And then however many points you score or don't score, you get put into a class. So I'll be competing against only S8s in the Paralympics,
Okay, so
which
could
is a
that
range of
be?
disabilities.
Yeah, I was going to say, could that be people who aren't amputees?
Yeah, no, exactly. So it could be like people with cerebral palsy, people missing parts of their arms. Yeah, I mean, tons of disabilities. So as long as you fall on that point scale, that's kind of where you're at. So,
How many people from the States are going for 100-meter back?
I think it is. In my class, I think it's just me. Oh no, actually, there's one other guy in my class going in the 100 back. But there's 12 guys total going from the U.S. To the Paralympics across all classes. So
Do you have a good gauge on what the international competition looks like and kind of where you stack up against it?
yeah, I've raced internationally for the last year. So I went to Chile and competed in Pan Am's there, and then I went to Italy in the spring and got a taste of international competition there. And yeah, I mean, I'm fighting to final is kind of where I'm at. Every day I show up and I'm looking to uh, I'm thinking about getting into that final at the Paralympics. So yeah.
Are there any adjustments that your coach has to make in terms of the amount of volume or the amount of training that you can handle versus your teammates, or is it kind of just individualized based on how you're responding to training?
No, not really. As a sprinter, I do what the other sprinters on my team do, which works out really well. I was mid-distance my freshman year, and that thankfully those days are behind me because those events are way harder than what I'm doing now. I like the sprint stuff, so there wasn't a whole lot of change. I show up, and do the set on the board, and do what my teammates do, and usually my coaches kind of forget whatever that I have on leg, and they just kind of treat me as anybody else on the pool deck.
Are there technical standards that they're focusing on? I mean, I'm sure with every amputee and with every disability, it's slightly different. But like, what are the? I guess are you working on different technical standards than your teammates are? Like, is technique highly individualized based on the disability, or are there still things that are consistent across diagnoses?
Yeah, I mean, swimming in general, no matter if you're able-bodied or have one leg or one arm or whatever, is super individual technique. Uh, I mean, you can show up to one of our practices and there's 22 guys, and every single one of us swims in a different, weird way that works for us. So, for me specifically, a lot of what I focus on is my core strength and keeping my kick um, as more of a balance for my arms and the rest of my body than as a like 6 beat kick where I'm just powering the leg. So yeah, that's kind of the big technical focus for me has been keep the core strong, don't let it like waver, and set my kick up so that it allows me to take powerful strokes for the whole 100 meters.
I just had a conversation with a John Edward Heath, who's a Paralympic snowboarder, amputee and aspiring Paralympic track sprinter. And we talked about the accessibility, like economically, of prosthetics and adaptive equipment. He just passed legislation in Maryland to deem like a second blade that's movement specific as something that would be covered by insurance. Have you had experiences where you've had trouble getting the necessary like equipment or prosthetics?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when I was in triathlon, it's a little tough because there's just so much equipment. And I can really attribute like everything that I've done in triathlon and athletically to programs like Dare to Try because they set you up with like prosthetics and stuff like that. Like they are generous enough to give out grants for people like me who need a running leg to go get a running leg and be able to lead a healthy life. So I think it just there's so many important organizations across the U.S. who help do that. And yeah, it's awesome to hear that legislation is being passed that insurance will have to cover those things because they are essential.
Yeah. He mentioned that it's law in 6 states, and they're hoping by 2028 games that it might be in 28 states. Although he thought that maybe they could push to have it kind of across the country. So yeah, that's obviously a great step forward to providing the necessary support. It's a question that we ask all the guests because since our podcast is kind of fitness specific more so than sport, although there's obviously overlap. What do you think gyms could do to be more accessible for people with disabilities?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Um, I think one thing that uh, gyms could do a better job of, and this comes down to individuals and trainers, is just having the knowledge of how to support somebody with a disability. Not everybody who shows up to a gym, has the equal opportunity to learn. Uh, Obviously, me and my weights coach, I'm lucky because I have a coach who's focused on me and my team, and so it's easy to get the knowledge out of him and to brainstorm things that work for me versus other people. But people who aren't lucky enough to be at a Division I program with a specific weights coach for them are not as lucky and need some support of uh, what is an alternative to a movement that I might not be able to do, but I can still use that muscle group. And so I think having that knowledge and sort of a base at every gym would be extremely helpful to people, and also really take off the, I guess the fear of going to a gym and not knowing what you're doing, because nobody who goes to the gym for the first time, regardless of able-bodied or disabled, knows what they're doing. And so I think spreading knowledge and just taking people individually as they come is very important for gyms.
So more coach education, and then just a willingness to kind of problem solve and come up with creative solutions that rely on the feedback of the athlete as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it does fall a little bit on the athlete too, of like, you got to use your brain to like really,
Right.
like, I mean, there's some like creative things that I've come up with in the weight room to figure out. And so it's like, just because you have to do something differently doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, or that it's like you're doing a different exercise. I think adapting things is awesome. And that's, if you're doing something a little bit differently, but it works for you, then you're doing it right.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can't make one blanket statement across all amputees, and no one's going to know how you function and how you feel better than you will. And like you mentioned
Exactly.
before, it's not only your amputation that you're considering, it's also scoliosis, it's also how your hips respond to training. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I mean, you're not just looking at you as an amputee, you're looking at you as a puzzle with these various pieces that you're trying to put together and develop a training program for.
Exactly. You got to get creative is what we found out.
Yeah. Do you find more, I guess, like with the more publicity that Paralympics is getting, do you think that it's a potential like career forward where potentially getting sponsorships and competing as an athlete, or do you think it will just be something that you really enjoy doing competitively, but that you still have your career, like you mentioned, in journalism or in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to look at. I mean, you mentioned the Paralympic side, but even the Olympic side, there's very few swimmers who are able to make a lifelong career out of swimming. It's just the way that sports work. It's that there's not a huge league or a huge market for swimming in general, and especially para sports. There's not a huge viewership market and whatever there to make a lot of money. I definitely think that athletes can be supported in a much better way while we are athletes, but I realistically don't see for all Olympic or Paralympic athletes that sports is your career for the rest of your life, which is why I've taken my education here at the university very seriously.
Yeah. Do you think you want to be a coach or stay involved post competitive years?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it, and I don't think the coaching side is for me. I'm really into media. I love like sports talk shows. I'm super into like football, college basketball, baseball. I love stuff like that. So I think I'll stick to the media side versus coaching, but I'll never
Perfect.
rule it out.
Just as important, like you said. I mean, it's the media and the marketing that put it in front of you to begin with, and kind of inspired you to pursue that path. So equally important as the coaches that support the athletes.
Exactly. Yeah.
For people who want to follow you and stay up to date with your competing, we'll include it in the show notes. But is there a best place to find you on social medias?
Yeah. Instagram is kind of all I got. I'm at Jack O'Neill 19, Oneil. Pretty easy to find me there. And yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit more active on Instagram. I've been pretty bad about it in the past, but I got to get better at it now. So yeah, follow me there. I promise to post some more stuff. So.
Well, Jack, thank you. I'm looking forward to watching you at the games this summer. It'll be cool to kind of watch those games and be like, oh, I had conversations with those athletes. Like, so I appreciate you taking the time today, and glad we were able to connect.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This has been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the AdaptX podcast. Our effort to amplify the ideas of our guests and create more inclusive and accessible industries is futile unless these episodes reach a larger audience. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a rating or a review on whichever platform you use. And if you would like to learn more about AdaptX, the course that we teach to health and fitness professionals and the projects that our organization is working on, you can subscribe to our newsletter through our website, www.adaptx.org. Until next Monday.